Swamiji, it's almost unfair to ask a monk about his life before he became a monk. But could you tell us something about the young boy Sankaran and the vision he had when he was 10 years old?
I was like any other boy, going to school and deeply interested in people around and in play and in swimming, etc. Much less in studies. But as a young boy, we had devotion to God, going to temple. So there was a dream of seeing Shiva high up in the mountains. That dream made a big impression, and that became actually realized when I went up to Ooty after 17.5 years at home to take initiation from the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, whose name also was Shivananda.
Swamiji, you were just 17 years old when you left home and decided to take the robes, in a sense. What prompted it? What catalyzed the decision? It isn't every 17-year-old that feels he wants to give up sort of the pleasures of the world.
That is because I chanced to read at the age of 14.5 a remarkable book. Somebody put it into my hands in my village. You won't get it in the villages, so he brought it from the town, Tuchu. That was the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Reading that book created a tremendous revolution in the mind, and it was like a bursting of a bombshell within the mind, which is still carrying me on. A tremendous impression of the purity of man's spiritual life, its rationality, and its intense humanity. That was followed by reading Vivekananda literature for the next 2-3 years. That gave me the final decision that this life can best be dedicated for the good of God and man, but God in man. That's the teaching of Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji. That took possession completely. So by 17.5, the decision became final, and so I left home and joined Mysore branch of the Ramakrishna order in 1926.
Did you face any resistance or opposition, or did people ask you to wait before you took such a major step?
Just very, very mild from the mother. So long as I am alive, be with me, because I used to be very helpful to my family, mother and brothers and sisters. But I said I will always be yours, whether I am in the house or in the mission. We love the parents, we love the people. We don't contract our love, we expand our love. So that continued. Afterwards also I have gone home and met them. Of course, long ago they passed away, many of them. So there was no struggle, absolutely no struggle.
Were you able to sort of, when you took on the robes, did it ever come up for you a feeling of regret, a feeling of anguish or doubt?
Oh, we love our home, our people, our village. There are beautiful villages in Kerala. So everything was fine. But what I was after was finer, much more attractive. So there was no anguish, there was no regret. It is only going from the lesser to something higher. And the higher includes the lower or the lesser.
Swamiji has at some point said that India is moving from sloth, tamas, and it's moving to rajas, and hopefully it will move towards more sattvic directions. What is your analysis of India today, and do you look forward to the future with hope and confidence?
I am full of hope for the future, based on facts, not just my imagination. Because as I entered the order, I have seen various changes taking place during the last 60 years, of which the biggest, of course, is freedom, political freedom, and lot of improvements in our social system. Many things which were narrow are being broadened, our attitudes are changing. So when an old culture and a vast population change, there will be a lot of tension. It is fully accepted. We have to accept it. we are passing through that tension of growth, tension of change. This will continue for some more decades till our people become fully educated in the modern democratic attitude and processes, and we say goodbye to our negative ideas like caste, untouchability, communal differences. So these are all on the way. We are just getting educated into it. A common education, a common political process, democracy, all these are meant to eliminate frictions eventually, but they themselves create friction in the beginning because we are still in the developing stage. And so, from my understanding, I find that we are alive and vital with the supreme truth today. We were not before. If there was no conflict before, it is because we had no energy. Now there is energy. That sometimes comes into conflict, comes into tension. It should not be looked down upon. We must welcome it and then overcome it. That is India's psychology of human behavior. Tamasic people becoming Rajasic. That is the development, that is the growth. And the Rajasic people must become more Sattvic. That's the next generation of development you shall have in India. When people read these great books of India dealing with the nature of human development, that is what gives me confidence. We have the philosophy of human development from the lowest to the highest. Let people understand this in course of time. Then they will get that education by which all the energy is released, be made constructive and creative.
Do you see this happening as a process of inevitability in terms of sort of a cyclical view of life and history? Or do you see any specific components?
There is nothing inevitable in this. Man creates history, and that history also creates him. Till now, we were the victims of history. We were a docile population. Today, we have started creating history. That creating history may be like Vivekananda going to America and conquering the mind and heart of that great nation. That is one type of what you call creation. It may be a dacoit doing high dacoity. That is also creativity. It can be any type, but we are not asleep. We are not what you call a sloppy nation anymore. That is what we can see today in the whole of India. Every segment of the population rising, demanding its own individual status in society. That is a welcome thing in the language of Swami Vivekananda.
Swamiji, but when you see a specific headline in a newspaper, 36 killed by terrorists, communal killings, what is your response at that time?
Well, this is also part of that development. We are experimenting with our 750 million population living together in a democracy. So in a vast body politic, here and there will be some trouble, just like in our body, a boil here or a boil there is bound to be.
But isn't there anguish that 35 people have been killed?
It is anguish, but not anguish that will destroy faith in the future. Anguish, which is a challenge, we shall overcome it by educating the nation in the higher values. And the most important thing we have to tell everybody in India is, this country belongs to all of you. All the blessings must flow to every group of the people. This is not one-man show. This is not one region ruling over other regions which we had before. That beautiful aspect of our political entity today, that this state derives its sanction and power from we the people of India, of all communities, of all sections. That must be well driven home into the minds of the people by the newspapers, by the media, by the television, for example, so that this country belongs to all of you. Everybody has a responsibility to build up this nation. If it is full of problems, treat it as your problem. You try to contribute to solve it. This is how a sense of responsibility instilled into the people will help us to solve these problems of development. We call it problems of development. Every nation has passed through. A mighty river is flowing, flooding, destroying. That is energy. But when you put a dam and a hydel channel and create agriculture and electricity, you bless the nation. Let our children be told, we welcome your energy, but give it a human direction, a humanist direction. This is the education that the nation will get from Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda.
Sri Ramakrishna was unique in that in his spiritual experiences, he went through, in a sense, the trances of experiencing the body of Christ, of Allah, and the various traditions. And the Ramakrishna movement has epitomized a secular thrust, though drawing primarily in a Vedantic philosophy. When we look at the nature of Indian society today, and with the various groups struggling for survival, how would you define the nature of a desirable secularism for India?
The word secularism, English is quite all right, though what is understood in the West is not what we understand here. There is secularism, is no religion or even anti-religion. Here we don't disturb any religion in our secular attitude. We only say every religion has a place in India. India is a land of harmony. For centuries and centuries, it has been a land of harmony. In the 3rd century BC, that great philosophical spiritual thought of India found expression in the Edict of Ashoka. It said, Samavaya eva sadhuhu, one of the great edicts of the 3rd century BC. In religion, harmony, concord is the right way. There is a profound message, not only by the sages, but by the political state in India. The same state supporting several religions can take place only in India. It has taken place. Today it is taking place even today. Our constitution stresses this point also. So what the people need is to be educated in these positive ideas. You have a right to exist, practice your own religion, respect the other person's religion. In that Ashokan edict, there is this wonderful statement. If anyone loves his own religion and reviles another religion, by that very act, he reviles his own religion. For in religion, harmony, concord is the right way. What a profound wisdom. We do not know this wisdom. Let our people be educated in this wisdom. Today, Sri Ramakrishna came for that purpose.
But yet, Swamiji, in India increasingly, and in a sense globally, what we're seeing is an assertion of more sort of an exclusive fundamentalism rather than the universal ideal that you're talking about.
That is a temporary reaction to the materialism of the modern West. It is a temporary reaction, and that reaction is expected because there is so much of materialism and a crow type of materialism. Materialism is good in the beginning, but when you push it further, it becomes just a crude type. So as against it, the entire world's religious heritage began to feel threatened. So they reacted, some of them, in a fundamentalist way. But this is only a temporary. In the long history of humanity, these little upsurges, they come, they play for some time, and they go away. New ideas come, sanity comes. Just like a French Revolution, you can have a reign of terror. You can just kill the Jacobin terror. After some time, order came. Then came modern democratic processes, etc. So similarly in the world of religion, we have to expect this present reaction. Then it works itself out. A better understanding comes. And that's also coming. A closer relationship between advanced thinkers in science and in religion. It is coming closer and closer. Then there will be no need for this fundamentalist approach to religion. But as I said, it is a temporary reaction which will pass off when conditions change.
We're also seeing an increasing interrelationship between religion and politics, where people are drawing upon a religious ideology or the belief of people in a particular faith to wield political power.
That is our political foolishness in India. We allowed, when we established our political state on a secular basis, religious communal political parties. If we had stopped it from the very beginning of independence, there would have been none of these problems. Even now it is not too late that communal parties and a secular political state can never go together. Let people realize it for the good of both the political state and religion. You don't get the best of religion when it comes to politics. You need a lot of violence, lot of trickery, lot of untruth to play with politics. The result is religion goes down and down. So today we need religions to be retrieved from that situation. Let them function as centers of peace, harmony, humanistic attitude. Then our politics also will become better. Thereby, that passion, that frenzy which religion can impart to politics, that will not be there. Calm, silent, steady politics will come when we have this separation of religious groups from secular political activities.
Swamiji, you have been offered many honors and awards through your long and illustrious life. Yet the first one you accepted was the Indira Gandhi Award for National Integration. What made you change your mind?
Because the concept of national integration was part of that award. That is my great dream, that this nation becomes integrated. In what way? Each one finding his or her own place, each group, and yet we become united. This is Swami Vivekananda's vision of India's future development. And so, when the award was associated with this value called national integration, I thought an exception can be made. I didn't make it myself. The Ramakrishna Mission headquarters made it on my behalf. But I was not for it, but somehow it came and I welcomed it.
Swamiji, how important is the mystical experience in one's spiritual evolution and spiritual seeking?
When we speak about mystical experience, we have an idea. It is something far away, meant for some ascetic somewhere. Absolutely not. It is the simple housewife can have that mystical experience. So also a shoemaker, administrator, everyone, because this profound philosophy of Vedanta tells you that the divine spark is hidden in every one of us. We can come in touch with it, manifest it, and in the light of that truth, we can deal with other people in a happy way. Therefore, mystical experience must be going side by side with the work that we do and the human relationships we establish. That's called practical Vedanta by Swami Vivekananda. What was the privilege of a few in the past will become the privilege of everyone in society when people understand it correctly. That we have had even shoemakers as great saints, great mystics in India, because the truth is there, but we neglected it. Today, that neglect has to go. When I work in society, I can work from my tiny ego point of view. That means friction with the others. But when I manifest a little my divine nature, I begin to feel oneness with others, and friction becomes less and less. The capacity for teamwork develops there. This is the type of human development we need. That is real mystical growth and development. So in that connection, there is a very precious word in the Gita that's called Rajarshi. A Raja and a Rishi in one. You are a man of authority, man of responsibility, a collector, a minister, a politician. They are all men of responsibility, men of authority. And at the same time, can you become also spiritual, manifest the divine within? Then you will become a Rajarshi. Rajanascha, te Rishiyascha, Rajarshihi. Shankaracharya's commentary. One who is both Raja and Rishi in one. When you handle power, you are a Raja. When you handle power for the good of all, you become a Rishi. This combination is what our administration, our management, all these aspects of human relations, we need to instill this idea into them.
Swamiji, the Ramakrishna movement and the Ramakrishna mission and Mutt and their activities draw their inspiration primarily from the Vedantic tradition. What is its attitude to other religions, other philosophies in the context of the secular structure that you work under?
Well, we respect every religion, and we respect also those who do not have any religion. Those who are atheistic, agnostic, we respect them, because the stress is on character, not in belief. That is the traditional view in India, and therefore, when you develop high character, whether you believe in a particular religious doctrine or not, it doesn't make any difference at all. So all over Mahabharata, Ramayana, everywhere you will find character is stressed, conduct, behavior. There is the biggest stress, not in mere what you call creedal, dogmatic affirmation or negation.
Since Ramakrishna drew inspiration and visions from different religious traditions, is the mission, for example, open to people from other faiths to come in and worship?
We respect every religion. We celebrate the birthdays of other religious teachers also. We go to their religious places. The feeling is that they all belong to us, that God is one. The paths are many, Ramakrishna said. Jato mat, tato path, that is Bengali way. As many paths, so many religions. As many religions, so many pathways to God. With that stress, which is also there in the Veda, Egam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. But it is being implemented today in a big way by bringing harmony where there is discord. That is the main work to be done. That is India's own work, both within India and outside. Swami Vivekananda took this message to the West, and the Western mind accepts this idea very much. So we have in our constitution that secular aspect. That means we are not going to encourage any particular religion, but all religions are equally welcome to develop here. One mistake we did in the beginning itself, that the Hindi translation of the word secular state. I wish that translation is changed straight away. It has done immense harm to the character of the people. That translation is Dharma Nirapeksha Rashtra. Now there can be no Rashtra without Dharma. Dharma is ethical sense, a concern for others, whether it is Soviet Russia or America or China or India. You can't have a Dharma Nirapeksha Rashtra, but a Mata Nirapeksha Rashtra you can have. Mata is the word for religion, but especially your own what you call inclination. That's called Mata. So Mata is the word for religion in that sense. So Mata Nirapeksha Rashtra will be the correct translation for the word secular. Never Dharma Nirapeksha Rashtra. So in the new educational policy, you are having value-oriented education. That value orientation is called Dharma, ethical sense. Say, children respecting their parents, students respecting their teacher, and neighbors respecting each other. All this is Dharma. It has nothing to do with the doctrine or any particular creed. So that mistake has to be corrected, that the young people must be told Dharma is essential for any healthy society. Otherwise, we shall become a land of unruly people. Many of us are unruly today in India because there is no Dharma, nothing to check the impulses. I feel like throwing a stone, I throw. I don't ask the question. It may harm somebody. You don't ask that question at all. So because there is no Dharma necessary, only your own profit and pleasure, nothing else is needed. That impression must be changed by changing vocabulary. Vocabulary plays a great part, especially this crucial vocabulary. What is the Indian state? Dharma Nirapeksha Rashtra. So no Dharma necessary. No. It is Mata Nirapeksha Rashtra. There are so many matams here. Vaishnava Matam, Shaiva Matam, Christu Matam, Islam Matam. So many matams are there. They are all welcome. But so far as ethical life is concerned, universally every religion stresses that ethical life.
Swamiji, yet the state has intervened it several times in areas of the Dharma. I don't mean Dharma purely in the Hindu sense. You had the Muslim Women's Bill, and there have been several issues which have...
Whatever is for the good of man is Dharma. It is written again and again. Anything that is against the good of man is no Dharma at
when
all.
is it, when the two are in conflict?
Cannot be in
the
conflict,
perceptions
we
of the
approach
state
it.
and the...
Conflict arises only from the peripheral aspect of religions or even in politics. But even in politics you can have a non-violent political life in India. There again Dharma comes in. Today Dharma is not there even in politics. So for nothing you just do violence. You destroy this, you destroy that, because I must have what I want. That is not Dharma.
Swamiji, in terms of your own spiritual quest, what are your goals now? How far do you feel?
You see, people like us, we leave home, our happy home with happy human relations. We are not going from a sadness to a happy life. We were having a happy life, and to a more fuller life we turn into. That's the nature of our spiritual quest. So it is a continuous process. To realize God, which is the aim of human life, we entered the order. The method of realizing God is service of humanity without respect to caste, creed or color, And so service on the one side, meditation alone on the other side. They go side by side, by which you grow spiritually. You manifest more and more the divine within you. So from this point of view, it has been a very happy life for the last 61 years. I should say there has been not one dull day in my life all these 61 years.